Five, four. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the New Block Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Chris, aka Prince, with the homie Darron, aka Medic Grizzly. Darron, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Good. We're feeling real good today. Let's
Good,
get into
good,
it.
good, good. I'm glad, man. I'm glad.
Uh
I'm
huh.
glad we're getting into Daenerys today, man. Because I am. I don't know if I would classify myself as a Daenerys stan, but
Okay.
I'm I'm a big fan of Daenerys. Daenerys is one of my favorite characters, maybe next to Jon, and Tyrion. Tyrion's always great. We haven't done a Tyrion chapter
No,
yet, but
we.
we'll
That's gonna
we'll,
be a
we'll
fun
get
day.
there. We'll get there. But
Fun
I
day.
I love Daenerys, and I absolutely rebuke what they did to her character in season 8 of the show.
Okay.
Um, and I think going through the books, like there's so much more to her character that I feel like they kind of like made it a little bit more simpler for the show, which I get. There's
Hmm.
only so much you can put on the screen. Like you can't do like inner monologues and inner thoughts and stuff like that
Yeah.
on TV. So, but I don't know. I just don't believe that it made sense for her character to make that weird kind of like Mad Queen turn that they did.
It was a popular thing. Everybody was curious
Yeah,
about
and
it. So
I get it. I think and as we go through the books here, like I feel like it'll become clear that that's just not where her character arc was headed.
this is for the new fans, everything else. This is the first chapter, and we are getting away from the North.
Yeah,
So go to it, brother. Tell me a little about it.
yeah. So this chapter opens up. Daenerys and is talking to her brother Viserys, and you learn pretty quickly that they're not in Westeros. They're in Essos, so they're across the Narrow Sea. It's so evident very early on that she is absolutely emotionally terrorized by her brother Viserys. There's a passage when she's like touching the cloth when he
Hmm.
like brings out this little like silk gown for her to wear that she said it was so soft that it terrified her. Like think about how
Yes.
damaged you have to be to like be like, oh, this dress is so nice. I'm like afraid of it.
And like it just tells you also like a little backstory. Everything is that Dany at this time is 13. She's 13.
Yeah, she's a
She's
child.
yes, she's learning. She's basically like going through this whole thing, and like she is so damaged from her brother. From I almost said Dany was a slave to her brother. Like the verbal abuse and like just overall, like she couldn't move without even like thinking twice about him and his anger. So this is a
Yeah,
13-year-old, and then she sees a beautiful cloth coming out, and he's talking about how your violent eyes will showcase it through his actual dress. Like that's a lot to go through your mind when you're 13.
right, right. And you get the sense that like obviously he's planning to marry her off to some guy named Khal Drogo, which we will meet later on in this chapter. Um, but we get a little bit of info about kind of like who these people are and what like where they are kind of in this world. So we get a little bit of info about Magister Illyrio.
Mm-hmm.
Dany, I love like her inner thoughts in this chapter because she clearly does not trust Illyrio,
At all.
but she's obviously not going to question Viserys because she's terrified of him. Um, but it's clear, and again, we've seen this in some of the earlier chapters too, that Dany is assessing the situation far better than her brother is, as far as like, Illyrio seems like he's full of shit. He seems kind of like a blowhard.
Yeah, like
Um,
there's a quote in there, like I'm paraphrasing, or like he's known to even sell his friends. Like he's known to sell everything. So basically, Danny's like, my brother's an idiot. He just goes with the flow. He thinks everything is all about him and how he is the king and everything else. And Danny's like, no, bro, like there's more going on here than what you are speaking about. Open your
right,
eyes.
right. No, and I love that they do that because it shows you very clearly on that like this guy who's supposed to be her brother and supposed to be technically by all the laws of Westeros the next in line for the throne. Um,
Hmm.
he's clearly not equipped to be that kind of a leader. Um,
So tell the fans, why were they even there?
Okay, so we get a lot of exposition in this chapter about the Targaryens and like what happened to them. So, we find out obviously that they're not in Westeros and they've been exiled to across the sea to Essos, and Dany has never actually even seen Westeros. I think that's something that a lot of people forget. She's never actually been in Westeros.
Hmm.
So they talk about a little bit about Robert's rebellion, how her brother and their mother were fled to Dragonstone, their island just not too far away from King's Landing, and their mother was pregnant with her,
Hmm.
and her mother had her on Dragonstone during like a really really bad storm, and her mother actually died giving birth to her, and ever since they fled Dragonstone, they've been kind of on the run.
Yeah, because King
Just
Robert is
kind of going from
basically
right because as a new king, if you have these legitimate heirs out here to your own throne, your claim is never going to be safe while they still
yep.
live. That's just how this war works. So they've just been kind of running place to place. We get a little bit of backstory about like how Robert's rebellion played out, and I love this bit here in the book where it says, Rhaegar, and I'm paraphrasing, but Rhaegar dying on the trident for the woman he loved.
Not his wife.
Not his wife.
Not his wife.
Not his
the
wife.
Woman he loved.
The woman he loved. And book readers, a lot of show watchers will know by now, but obviously they're alluding to Lyanna Stark, which is Lord Ned Stark's sister. R plus L equals J. I feel like this is not like a big theory anymore. It's pretty much a confirmed thing. People know it. If you don't know it, get on board with it.
It tells you how Mr. Martin basically put this in the. This is chapter, I guess, technically 3 of the actual, but he's just like he's
4 if you count the prologue. But
prologue. So he's already putting one of these massive conclusions and thoughts and theories that we have. Just like, by the way, the woman he loved. I'm not going to say it's his wife.
Again, man, just little seeds. Little seeds.
But with Dany being a Targaryen, like, there's no dragons at this time. There's no nothing. Like, it's literally like these are the last of the kind. So King Robert wants them going.
Right. And it's honestly kind of really sad when you think about, when she's revisiting all the things that they had to do to kind of survive. Like, they sold everything that they had, and they even talk about selling their mother's crown.
Yeah.
Like, that's gotta suck. That's gotta be like the last thing you probably hold on to. But I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta eat. So you can't eat no crown.
And it's mentioned, like, you're talking about the brothers and Viserys and how the old way and how the kingdom and how the Iron Throne is what all that he cared about. It was like his prayer. Like everyone talks about it. He wants it. That's my land, my land. Yeah. Versus Dany, you just said it, was never there. All she remembers is a red door, a lemon tree outside of her window, how she hears the kids playing, and that's all she really wants. She doesn't really know anything about this giant battle and this throne besides the stories that her narcissist brother is always telling her.
Yeah. No, that's a good point that you bring up. I think, and that's something that I feel like a lot of people gave Daenerys a lot of crap for in the show, because they were like, oh, she's so entitled, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, again, this is something that you miss if you don't read the books, right? If you just watch the show, like, you don't understand it. Like, she's never been to Westeros. In her inner monologues in the books, she doesn't even really care all that much at this point, right? It's not until later on where she feels like the burden of continuing her family line and continuing her family's dynasty ultimately falls to her, where she feels like, okay, I am quite literally the last known Targaryen on this planet. There's no one left.
It took time.
Right. And that's why I love so much about Dany's story is you see her start from nothing and climb to the top, right? So, like, for people to say that she's entitled, but don't scoff at people like Renly, for example, who, spoiler alert, tries to usurp the throne from his older brother. Like, it's one, and we're not going to get into this too early, but like, if
I'll hold that bullet in. I'll hold that one.
Yeah, we'll get to Renly and Stannis much later, but
so we're trying to paint the picture of Dany being an innocent child, and that she literally does not know that the war that has taken place prior to her birth and the war that potentially is going to happen, and how her name strikes fear into a lot of people because of the past history,
Yep.
and how everyone wants her to be gone because of her name and the potential power that comes with it. So then moving place to place to place, and then her brother being, he's a jerk. I know we said that. He's just a jerk.
He's
And
such
like,
an asshole, dude.
I think they call him King Beggar because they to the point that people they didn't have anything else, and like he's just so asking for everything as if he is the king, but he's not.
Right. Right. And it's there's a small piece of me that feels bad for Viserys because I understand where he's coming from, right? Like
Okay.
he in his brain, his brother got killed, his father got killed, his mom's dead. He is quite literally, yes, he is legally the heir to the throne.
Hmm.
And there's no other, and we understand, this is Westeros, male heirs take precedent.
Yeah.
He knows that in this world, he is the last legitimate Targaryen heir. So he feels like this several hundred-year dynasty has fallen on his shoulders, and he's in
Hmm.
the worst position possible. And so he so desperately wants an army, and so this has caused him to make this decision that he wants to essentially sell his sister to marry this Dothraki horselord in return for an army.
Yeah, and on top of them,
Um,
like he knows that he was of age. Like he was what, I think 7 or 8 when he fled. So
right.
he remembers. He actually remembers his grandfather. He remembers his brother. He remembers his father. He remembers all that. And so when you go from that to on the run, to Dany, it's nothing. To him, it's everything.
It's everything.
So
Yeah.
that's why he wants to get the army back, because he knows he needs that to go back.
Yep. And he can't just go to Westeros and be like, "Hey guys, can I stay here?"
No.
He's gonna have to reconquer the country all over again.
What you
So
need an army for? And what's the best bait
right,
in Game of Thrones?
exactly. So we cut to Dany taking a bath, and we get a little bit of a hint that Targaryens are kind of predisposed to heat,
Hmm.
the same way that they kind of hint that Starks are to the cold. Again, that kind of Song of Ice and Fire kind of trope, right? You've got
Just ah.
two families from that have clearly they have magical bloodlines. One is ice, one is fire. You get a little bit of that. So they talk about her betrothal to Drogo, and more about kind of the history of the world where Dany was like, I always thought I was going to marry my brother Viserys. So they talk a little bit about the Targaryen bloodline and why they married brother to sister and to keep the bloodlines pure, and a lot of that had to do with what they assumed was control over dragons, which granted them this dynasty that they had for almost 300
It's
years.
just like Aegon and his sisters, like that's literally how it's been. Like the greatest kings have always married within. So
Yep.
that's just gonna pass on to everyone else.
Yep. 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 So on their way to Drogo's manse, they're in this litter. They're being carried. It's Dany, Viserys, and Illyrio, and they're having a little bit of small talk. And again, Dany's just kind of sitting back, assessing the situation. And you can tell, like we said earlier, Dany is not fooled by Illyrio's words that the people of Westeros are drinking secret toasts to your health.
Yeah,
She's like, oh, this guy's full of shit.
absolutely.
Viserys is over there nodding,
Okay.
happy to hear that, just happy to hear what he wants to hear.
Idiot.
But she's like, dude, come on, you can't seriously believe this.
Hmm.
So again, it just clearly showing you that she's more apt to what's going on than Viserys is, and he's the one calling the shots. She even talks about like him like having a sword that Illyrio lent him. He doesn't even have his own sword, which is like
No, and she
kind of
knows that
really
he's never
pathetic.
used a sword. Like
Yeah,
he talks all this big bad wolf. Like, bro, I see through you too. Like I know, I am terrified of you because of you have physically grabbed me and then like assaulted me verbally to the point that I've learned this trait of being scared.
right.
But to other grown men, you are a little boy,
Yeah,
and no one's really. I'm not gonna call your bluff, but I know you're bluffing.
right. But you also got to remember too, you know, her dad was already dead when she was
Yeah.
born. Her mom died giving birth to her. Viserys is the only family she knows.
Yep.
That's it, right? So like, he's essentially like a father figure to her as well as her older brother, right? And we know how this patriarchy, system works in Westeros and in this world. So like, of course she's terrified of him,
Mhm.
So she might see some things, but she's not going to call him out on it because she doesn't
That's a good,
want to what
very
she
good
calls
point.
wake the dragon,
Yeah.
which is
Wait,
which is
wait, the dragon.
hilarious. Which is a hilarious thing for him to say,
He
considering he's
says
such a
it
pussy.
numerous times that you don't want to awaken the dragon.
Yeah.
Like, yo, sit down. Like, sit down, dude.
So okay. So they finally get to the manse. And again, just like describing settings, George is so good at just putting you
Hmm.
in the actual place. He talks about like the scents in the air and like how people were dressed and all these other things. Um, and
Even the
they talk about
smell. The
yeah, like
smell.
even the smell, like the smell of like cinnamon and lemon in the air. And they
Mhm.
talk about like the Dothraki's appearances. And uh, Viserys is talking about how long Drogo's hair is. It's like it's in a braid and it's got bells in it and
Mhm.
it's swinging down like past his belt, right? And he's a pretty tall guy, right? So
And
this is a
skin of copper. Like, it
right
just
a
shows,
polished
like,
copper, right?
hmm
So his hair is super long, and Viserys is like, "Do you know why the Dothraki wear their braids like that?" And he's kind of giving her a little bit of history of the Dothraki, saying, when Dothraki lose in a battle, they cut their braids off in shame. See how
hmm
long his hair is? He's never lost a fucking fight.
undefeated.
Undefeated, never lost.
Not happening. Not happening.
So like you get a little bit of info that like okay these Dothraki, they talk about how big he is and everything like that. Like
Yeah,
these
like he's
Dothraki are
stood a
they're
foot
not they're
among men, like
right.
among the rest of everyone else. And like, remember she was getting her bath, going back a little bit. The slave was talking about how attractive he was and how he was basically a man among men, and how he just was that guy. He's going to stand out for you. And Danny was talking about, I was quoting her saying that dragons did not mate with the beasts in the field. So she never even thought that she was going to marry anyone else or have anything, like you said, besides follow the bloodline and actually do what the ancestors have always done. So her seeing a man that she's going to actually end up being with and seeing the long braids and the copper skin and everything else, that's a whole different world.
Yeah, and not to mention again, she's 13
Yes.
and she's about to marry a man, a barbarian in all sense of the word, who has 100,000 men in his
Mm-hmm.
Khalasar in his army, and obviously she's fucking terrified,
Yes.
understandably so, right? And of course Viserys is being Viserys and is like pinching her arm and is like, look, don't fuck this up for us, okay? Like, and she's like, I just want to go home, and this is where there's a little bit, just a tiny bit of sympathy for Viserys when she's like, I just want to go home because she's talking about home to like Illyrio's place,
Yes.
and she knows that that's not really home.
Mm-hmm.
And Viserys is like, home? We don't have a home. We only have one home, and it's half a world away.
And they took it.
How do you think? How do you think we're gonna get there? We can't just go there. We have to go home and take it.
So I don't feel sorry for him. I see your
I
point.
mean, I don't
see,
feel sorry for him, but
see,
like I get his frustration.
I can relate to that part, and I will agree with you on that part.
He's
But
still
when
a sack of shit at the end of the day. I'm
Danny's,
not defending
I know,
Viserys at all.
but Danny said that she didn't want to marry him. She said that even though she was scared of her brother, that Drago had terrified her, and she's never felt it before. She's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to do this. I want to go back to the Red Door. I want to get away from here. And you're like, no, you're going to do this. I don't care if everyone has to literally, excuse my language, fuck you. Everyone has to, including the men, the horse, everything. So
Yeah,
your
he's
moment,
awful.
yeah, your moment of not of feeling
You know
like
what?
that,
I rebuke what I said. I
thank you.
rebuke
Take
what I
that
said.
back.
He's 130% an absolute shithole.
He didn't care. She was a piece
Yeah,
of meat. She
yeah,
was literally a piece of meat. You
yeah,
have a
yeah.
13-year-old sister saying that I don't want to do this. That's a grown man. I am terrified. And you're telling me I will let not only that grown man do it, all of his men to do it.
If
And the
that's what it took.
horse, just to get back over there.
Yeah,
and she
yeah,
never even been over there.
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
Viserys
come on,
is.
come
Yeah,
on.
Viserys is. Yeah, I apologize. I did not mean to have any kind of positive feelings toward Viserys. He's a shitbag
Yeah,
in the highest sense of the word. Um, and I
that's
won't spoil anything, but
no, we're not.
he deserves his what he gets. He deserves it.
Not trying to spoil everything, but let's go on a little like reference. Remember when he said that the lady that was giving the bath, the slaves that were getting the bath, they said that Drogo's slaves even have gold um, collars,
Right,
and how Dany was wearing like a almost like gold choker type thing. And just reminded that she is still a slave to this. And then
yep,
how everyone's chasing the gold crown. Like remember he said that Jaime Lannister, his wordplay in this is really good because even Jaime Lannister was a gold sword that killed his
right.
father. Like he used the gold and the reference of things in this chapter a lot, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you bring up. It's just like tying all these things in
Yeah.
with one another. It just shows you how good of a writer George is. But we also get another brief introduction to another character in this chapter, Sir Jorah Mormont.
Yeah.
And Danny picks up. He's like, "Oh wait, he's a knight." He's like, "Yep,
Mm-hmm.
he's from Westeros." So Illyrio kind of gives them a little bit of info about why he was exiled. Basically, he found a poacher on his land. Instead of giving him up to the Night's Watch, he sold him to, to slavers,
Mm-hmm.
and of course that's outlawed in Westeros. So they wanted his head for it, and so he fled. But
Yes.
again, it's tying in some of the setting because they talk about he didn't give this man to the Night's Watch, which lets you know, okay, this falls under Lord Eddard's purview, right? So you get a little bit of connection from Sir Jorah, or as we
Mm-hmm.
like to call him, Sir Friendzone.
Friend zone for life. That's it. Like there was a president of friend zone. That is him. He is the
Yes, it
elected
is.
official for life.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Zero term limits.
Yeah,
He will
no, but
serve
I heard
until
the
the day he
book.
dies.
I heard the book. He's a little different than the actual movie. I haven't read that far. I'm looking forward to this process. They say he's a little. He's
Um,
the TV show did him justice, but not the book. The book is a little creepy.
I, I'll let you paint your own opinion
Okay.
when we once we get through this book a little bit.
Okay.
I actually kind of genuinely like Ser Jorah.
Okay.
Um, I think he's a good character. I do think he has a little bit too much of a affection for Daenerys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he is a good character. And I think he does have her best interest at heart at the end of the day.
Okay.
It's just he's just kind of a simp, and you know that sucks for him. But
Yo, that is the perfect. Is okay. I'm with you. I am with you. That's a great, great. That was great.
look, this is why we call him Sir Friendzone. He's a
That
great
was,
fighter. He's good at what he does. He's a great character, but
called
he
him a simp.
is.
He called him King Simp, the
Yeah,
Knight
I
of
mean,
Simps.
he's Sir
Oh
Friendzone.
man.
That's who he is. The Knight of Sims.
But if you also notice that Danny's observation skills and knowing how she was talking about how there was a bunch of different whole houses there and how they all wore different material. Remember the copper skin of Drogo, and they were talking about how he wore wool. He's how like you said, like over at Winterfell, it's colder versus over
Right.
here is more of like a spring summer breeze.
Right.
I remember earlier Martin was talking about how the fruit was here. There's no really fruit there. We're talking about dire trees. Like it's just a different world and how the elements and the culture, and then you bring someone from over there who's running from King Robert. He still has his culture. He still wants to wear his
Right.
garments, and you see he's the outsider. And
Yep.
Danny
He sticks
being
out like a sore thumb.
yeah, and Danny
Yeah.
being who she is, observant to that, realize you don't belong here. I want to talk to you. I want to know what's more about what's going on.
Right, right, and also Viserys also wants to talk to him for
Yeah,
obviously reasons. I mean, for the
King
same
Beggar.
reasons you just laid out, though, right? I mean, like he's also an exiled, highborn person from Westeros, and so Viserys he clearly thinks that they might have common cause, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I think overall this was again not a long chapter. Again, just kind of giving you introductions to some of these characters. um, very very early on. But yeah, I mean, I really like Daenerys. It's interesting to revisit this early chapter and
Hmm.
seeing how like terrified and innocent and just naive she is. Well, not I wouldn't even call her naive, but just there's just so much that she just does not know yet about the world, and to
Hmm.
watch her like grow into what she ultimately does become is just
The
it's an incredible journey, and I feel like the books do it so much more justice.
the children of this book have the weight of, oh, it's ridiculous. And
Yeah,
like, let's think about this. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it said John and Robert Snow were 13 as well, 13, 14 range, right?
yeah. Rob is I think 14, and I think Rob
Okay,
is 15.
okay. So look at what they did. And Reckon was how he was like mad for Reckon being scared of a direwolf. Like just knowing the pressure and the responsibility and how much they have grown and just the same age bracket versus Dany, who's been running and doesn't know anything, and she's being like almost like slaved off, like almost sold to
Yeah,
the highest bidder and
I
the
mean
best
she's
army.
absolutely sold off.
Yeah, that's exactly what, so. Like just seeing how you are similar in age, but you are walking two different lives across the narrow sea.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
Martin's a
That,
beast. He's
yeah,
opening the
that's
universe.
yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. I think you know it to your point about like the children kind of carrying the weight of all these burdens that their forebears have kind of placed on them.
Hmm.
Um, and you see kind of going through the books that it's this younger generation, the Johns, the Robs, Dannys, Bran, kind of coming up, and they're the ones who are, I think, in the end game, going to have the most influence over what happens in the story. You know what I mean? So that's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, great chapter. I love Daenerys. I can't wait to get more into her journey here. I think the next chapter is Eddard. It's Ned's first chapter, so
Okay,
we'll get a little look at him next week. But Darron, you got any other final thoughts?
I'm loving this, man. New Block Nerds, man. Keep support us. We love it.
Yeah, definitely like, subscribe, do all the things. Show us some love, leave some comments, tell us if we suck. Um,
Or
if you
so you
do,
love us. We'll
yeah,
take
or
it
tell us
away.
you love us. You know what I mean? If you talk shit, I may pop back. I may just ignore you. We'll just have to wait and
I'm
see and
popping
find
back.
out.
I'm popping back.
All right, guys. I've been Chris, Deron. It's a pleasure as always, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace and love.